Hello and welcome to So Divine Conversations. I'm Megan Skinner.
And I'm Stephanie Gailing.
And this is our mid-month podcast where we have a conversation. We dig into a theme or a topic that we feel is relevant for the times, all with an eye towards inspiration and helping you to lead a more conscious life. So hello, Stephanie.
Megan, hi.
Hi, Happy New Year. Here we are. So our topic today for conversations is pivoting. That's right, pivoting. I think that we're all learning to pivot a bit, being light on our feet as we pivot left and then we pivot right and then we shake it all about. So we're going to talk about how that works for us and the collective with our special guest today. So, Stephanie, I'm going to let you do the honors.
Okay. Really, really excited and happy and joyous and all the rest to have Amanda Carter Gomes with us today. Amanda is an editor, a writer, a producer, and the founder of the online publication The Fold. She launched The Fold in July of 2017. It's a content creation vehicle focused on sharing and promoting the experiences, efforts, and learnings of the evolved woman. In collaboration with a group of exemplary women, writers, and creative, The Fold highlights ageless individuals who are open to change and confident to inspire revolution at any age. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
And speaking of revolution, 2021 feels like it will offer us a lot of that. You know, just thinking about the main astrological alignment, which is the Saturn-Uranus square, which is very much about breakdowns and breakthroughs and staying bouncy and detours, and the pivot, which is why we chose this topic today. So Amanda, tell us, just to start, like, what's pivoting like for you, or what's your pivot happening right now?
I mean, I feel that the last year has been an exercise in pivoting for us all. I mean, I feel like akin to staying bouncy, like you said. I think it's just, for me, it's been a lot about changing expectations of what life looks like, of what work looks like, of what social interaction looks like, of what politics looks like, and being more fluid and trying to adapt in whatever way possible. And I think that I, by nature, am a problem solver in various aspects. I think that was really great when I was a photo shoot producer and a line producer, just you solve problems. And I feel like pivoting is kind of solving a problem too. It's not just for business, but you can, in your personal relationships, in your parenting, whatever, there's always room to change. At least that's my goal and hope.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, Amanda, you're bringing up that word expectations. That really resonates for me as a part of this pivot that we're all doing is, I don't think we can have expectations. And I think for a lot of us, there's a feeling of being forced to let go of those expectations. But yet at the same time, by letting go of those expectations, it kind of gives us more of that freedom to move, like you're saying, to be fluid, to do that pivot. I think a part of that, like when I think about pivoting, I think about, like a dancer, being light on your feet and like getting ready to pivot here or pivot there. And so, I think that for me, as we're talking, perhaps part of being graceful, if you will, in that pivot is maybe being present in the moment. Well, because you're good at this, Amanda. So, do you have any tips for our listeners about doing the pivot right now?
I think I'm also a big risk taker. I'm comfortable with making change. And so I think that that's something that I saw modeled in my youth. So it's been something to me that if I'm unhappy, I'm just going to try to fix it. If this isn't working for me, I'm going to shift and figure out what does work for me. So that for me has allowed me just to I'm acutely and not always positively, but definitely in tune with what I find fulfilling in work. And sometimes I need to give it a little more time. Sometimes I need to just not pivot so quickly. But I'm comfortable with moving and changing things. But I think too that right now we're all so much more aware and present of what does fulfill us or what does shape our day or what we can do and want to do. Like I said, in various aspects of our lives. And I think we've kind of been forced into being present recently. And I think that
Yeah.
helps a lot. And instead of like our lives before, I mean, my life, I feel like I'm not saying that it was so jam packed, but it was obviously much busier than it is right now. And the pace at which I moved through things, I never got to stick with any one thing for too long, like in my emotional capacity. I never like had to sit with discomfort very much because there was always something else to distract me. And now you can't be distracted as easily. You kind of got to wade through your shit. And so I think that helps us figure out what serves us and what doesn't.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, I've had a lot of conversations with people too, right? Like, there's so many less distractions. There's so many less sort of shiny things to like turn our attention to or like activities to run away from. Like, time has been so different over the last year, and we just have to be with things and be with ourselves.
Yeah,
And it's no surprise that sometimes we didn't do that before because it's sometimes not that easy.
totally.
But it's important and it's essential, for ourselves and for everybody around us that we all do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If that's like you guys, if you're looking for, like you were saying, connecting to consciousness in the beginning in your intro, I think if that's something that's of interest to you, I think you have to get uncomfortable. Um, and, I feel lucky in that I've had this time. I mean, my husband and I both work from home. I'm really privileged in that way. So I've had the space to do that. Um, so it's not always been easy, but it's something that has made me more committed to changing the things that aren't really working.
Yeah, and Amanda, you're saying too that you're comfortable with change and that you're a risk taker. And I understand you're an Aquarius, so that would be very Aquarian of you.
Sure.
So, but for like someone like myself, I'm not always that comfortable with change and I'm not a risk taker.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you since Stephanie and I decided that we were going to have the theme, for conversations about pivoting, how much that word has come up in my conversations with friends or colleagues, and I'll be like, "Well, this happened." They're like, "Well, you're just gonna have to pivot." And I'd be like, "Well, that didn't happen." "Well, pivot over there." And it's almost and then I'll be watching, something on the news. "This is a pivot." And it's like, "Whoa." I think, first of all, Stephanie, we're so tapped in to the zeitgeist, but also it's really kind of put this awareness about maybe this is something that is more prevalent and that we're doing that we may not be completely conscious of all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, yeah. And I don't know how much you guys feel that self awareness and age and confidence has to do with any of it. And I'm not saying that I've always been an incredibly confident person, but I've always had a very low threshold for unhappiness, I guess. And so, I mean, there was a period in my life where in my 20s, that I had 11 jobs in 9 years. And
Wow.
I just kept pivoting, but I was pivoting right into the same job at a different location. So there was some deeper work I had to do on that. Um, so I think that it can also be a fear tactic that you can use as well. But I think like really thinking about kind of the expectation part, not caring what other people regard you for or what they think you're doing or how you're doing it or if it's your relationships or moving or whatever it is, like just really knowing that it's about serving yourself in the way that you can. I hate this sounds so cliche, but really like live a life that feels authentic to who you are.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, and I think too, right? Like that notion too, when we think about like having the courage to pivot, but on the other side of that spectrum is that just like, I'm not going to stay with something. I'm just going to change it. I'm just going to change it. Right. It's that level almost of like, I don't know if it's in the center of that, but like the conscious pivot, right? Like, I know when it is that I still wanna stay with something,
Mhm, mhm.
and then having the patience or what the commitment or the endurance or the tenacity or whatever it takes to do that. But then knowing when it's time to say, "You know what? I don't really wanna keep on doing what I'm doing," nor, maybe it's also, "I can't keep on doing what I'm doing," right? And
Right.
just saying, having the belief and having the faith and being really conscious at the moment of saying, like, "I'm just gonna, go to another route, and I can do it. I might not know how to just do it yet, but the faith that within me are the resources, right? The skills, the
Mm.
talents, the community, however we find support so that we can take that other path."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, Stephanie, I think that faith piece, and I'll be curious what you have to say about it. But I think that faith piece is key. Because
Mhm.
I think pivoting sometimes can be scary. What if I pivot and I fall?
Right.
So I like that you're bringing up faith.
Yeah. I think that there's so many I think it's probably really a lot harder to pivot out of a relationship that you've been in for a really long time, right? Than to pivot your professional life.
Absolutely.
I think that there's different levels of making these shifts and changes. And I think that there's like small things that you can do too that can have a huge impact. But I think it's about just evolving. Like and if you're not and changing and being comfortable with it and like again another term I'm not like a huge fan of but I feel serves us is like really leaning into it and being okay with it. I think it takes practice for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that my pivoting so many times in my or whatever changing jumping ship maybe would be a better term for all the different jobs I had in my 20s. I think it was also when I very much associated what I did for a living with who I was. And I feel better now that I not better, but I like now I'm like, that's one part of who I am. That's not all of who I am. So I think that that's an easy thing for me to shift and mold when I can.
Well, I think even in that, right, it's not just like we're talking about outer pivoting, like, "I'm
Yeah.
gonna go here, I'm gonna do that, or I wanna make that change." It's also in terms of, like, that inner pivoting, right, in terms of, like, our perspectives, our beliefs,
Right.
those narratives that might keep us sort of going in sort of, in a rut of the way that we see and view the world, and it's, like, pivoting to a new perspective, right,
Mhm.
that might come from more confidence or faith or love, or generosity or whatever it may
Mm.
be. And I think and I love Megan when you said before, like, this notion too of, like, I'm just really into the dance, like, analogy,
Yeah.
which we could totally take so many places with that, but also, like, light touch, right? There's something also
Yeah.
especially if this world right now is pivoting itself so quickly,
Right.
right? How do we be adaptable so that we're like, yes, we'll be shocked, but so that, like, how do we work with that, right? How do we work when everyone around us is pivoting?
I
Yeah.
know. I mean, I don't know about you all. When everything else around me is changing, I tend to want to be very still. So I think that, yeah, I don't know how. And I'm curious, Megan, what sign are you? Not that this is.
I am a Libra, and I have
Oh,
Leo rising,
you
which
do,
I
when is your
always
birthday?
mention
What
because
day, what day is your birthday?
I'm October 22nd, so I'm right on the cusp of Libra, Scorpio, and I have a Pisces moon, so
Okay.
yeah. Yeah. Well, in Libra, I mean, here we are talking about, the balance, right? And it's interesting because as a Libra, we're the sign of balance and harmony. And I always say, no, we don't come in that way. Part of what I feel like the Libra and Karma is learning how to do that balance, how to be adaptable, how to make those adjustments. And I know for me, with some of my Libra, I tend to be here or here.
Mhm,
And as
mhm.
we're talking about, one extreme or the other, and as we're talking about pivoting, what's coming to my mind just in an image is of pivoting. And Stephanie, you brought this up about being light on your feet. It's like it's changing direction,
Yeah.
but isn't a part of you still in a place of it's not like you're exiting, you're taking something and changing direction with it. So I think this may be just a fine line, but I think there's something interesting here, and we've kind of started to talk about it, where it's not exit stage left, but it's taking something
Mhm.
and not abandoning it, but we're just shifting it over here or shifting it over there. And to me, kind of sticking with it, but being adaptable with it
Mhm.
maybe part of the pivot.
I think you're building on it, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
like taking what you've learned and gained and built and building on it. With you guys, I believe you both have done in the careers that you have, right? I mean, and I don't think it has to be some dramatic, I'm packing my bags, I'm moving across the country or the world, and I'm quitting my corporate job and opening a bakery in Italy or something. It doesn't have to be under the Tuscan
Oh,
sun, but that sounds
we'd
fun.
like to do that.
I know. I think people think of it as such a big, crazy shift, and I think it honestly can sometimes just be returning to what you've already known about yourself, and really being comfortable with it.
I completely agree. And I think too, like, I know for myself and other people, some other people, right? Like, it's still really important to have that through line, right? It's not just like I'm just going to completely recreate something. I'm going to change. I'm going to pivot. Like, what also sort of feels like helpful or sort of from like a security or a stability point is that I'm still trying to achieve, I know what I want to be, or I know what I want to achieve, or I know who it is that I am. It's just, again, I'm still in that same place, but I'm just taking a different path to get there. Right. So you
Yeah.
still feel aligned with who you are. It's not like, oh my God, I'm now this other person I don't even know. It's just more, again, like, okay, that is not the door I want to move through. I'm just going to pivot and go in this direction, but I'm still right. I'm still headed where I want to go. But again, it's that light touch. Like maybe it's not that door that's the right door to go. So I'm not going to be attached to that. But I still kind of know, again, how it is that I want to be expressing myself in my life and my being.
And maybe pivoting is kind of just being in the flow, honestly allowing yourself to be in the flow.
Yeah.
Like see where it takes you. I have this amazing acupuncturist I now see, and she um, is she's a ceramicist and an artist. She makes her own sake and then takes like the skim off the sake and makes these face masks. And
Oh
then
my
Oh
gosh.
my
she's an
goodness.
acupuncturist as well. She has this little acupuncture shed in her backyard, but she's also, she became a chaplain. And so she
Oh.
went and did, yes, like acupuncture and like chaplain work through Harborview. And then she did it for like hospice care. And this was all motivated by her herself aging. That she
Interesting.
was like, I really wanted to know more about death, to get up and close to death. And so I could be, as she got older, it wasn't something that consumed me or was fearful to me.
Hmm.
So, so she's done all these crazy pivots her whole life, or not her whole life, but since her in the last 30 years. And it's been
Wow.
fascinating. And just with COVID, she stopped doing the chaplain work just because it became really too dangerous for her.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and that kind of reminds me of is, I've been on the Fold magazine
oh, you're so
online a lot just because I knew we were going to be talking with you, and it's a wonderful publication,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I really encourage our listeners to
Yeah.
check it out, thefold.com. And you interview so many people, Amanda, and you hear so many stories, and maybe you could, give us, a couple more examples. The thing that I've been hearing a lot from clients, and I bet Stephanie has too, is this theme of reinvention, as a part of the pivot, because, people that have been working in one career, like you're saying, this woman for, a long period of time when their career is not there anymore, or they're having to stay home, or this door closed. And I think that for a lot of us, and I feel this way myself, maybe in subtle ways, that we're in this process of reinvention
Mhm.
to really, first of all, to catch up and be present and be relevant. I mean, I think there's always that question of, is this relevant with everything that's going on right now? So maybe you can, you share just a little bit about like, you interview so many people, about any stories about pivoting and reinvention.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I just think of, even just because this is very timely. There's a woman I know and have interviewed on the Fold, called, her name is Jessica Yellen, and she was a White House correspondent, worked for CNN, worked for MSNBC, decided to, like, she knew the news was just, the 24-hour news cycle was completely overwhelming people, and that it was also the time where there was like this, the fake news term was getting used and thrown around quite a bit. So in 2018, she left her television career and started her own news channel on Instagram, essentially.
Oh,
And
wow.
She has been like my go-to source, honestly, for the past 2 years. She has phenomenal interviews. She just does it all on Instagram Live, has a Patreon that you can contribute to, and built a following, like a significant following from like, I think 20,000 to now she has like 475,000 people. Um, and just wanted to use the skills that she had acquired. And she's very professional, but she definitely just is like, I'm here to like put your mind at ease. Let's like decipher this. She
Mm,
had like Zooms that you could attend after the debates. Okay, this is what they said. This is what this means. Like, I'm going to tell you what my sources are telling me. Like, and was very just transparent, and it's been great and fantastic. So she's one person that comes to mind right now. I mean,
that's a great one.
yeah, and I mean, I love profiling women who have made changes in their life. So there's, I think about my friend Julie, who hasn't been on the site yet, but I'm working on something with her, who was a mother at a young age, and at the age of 35 picked up a camera and became a fine art photographer, and
Mm.
is now living in my hometown of Springfield, Missouri. Has never left because she has 3 children, and one of them is there, and she needs to be there to offer care to that child. But she has built this insane and incredible career as a fine art photographer and selling pieces to Elton John and,
Mm.
you know, Reese Witherspoon, and like Billy Collins wrote the forward to her latest book, and just like made these incredible connections in the art world and has all these relationships, but has never left her. And she's the oldest of 9 children, and she and 6 of her sisters live within a mile of each other in the neighborhood they grew up in. And so just to see somebody, try that at that age, she's in her 50s now. So 35,
Wow.
I think, obviously still young, but to come into photography at that age is not super young. Um, and so just like, and then, just these people that just kind of just decide to go for it and follow what they know or are excited about. Um, and kind of also tailor it to where they are in their life and as their life changes too. They don't, I think there is something to be said about getting to a place where you're comfortable and know that you can do something that works for you, and it doesn't have to be something that, in our day and age of celebrity and influencers and all of these things. I think that's really nice to just know that it can be for just for you, or you can try to like make a career out of it too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's I mean, it also comes so alive, right? Like, in
Mhm.
hearing these stories, about how people have just decided, "Okay, this is who I am, this is what and now what I wanna do," right? This doesn't necessarily what I've done before define where I'll go,
Yeah.
right? Which I love.
Yes. Or like writing a book about something like for you, Stephanie, writing your book about dreams. I think about, that um, how your work with astrology built off that interest, and then led to this shift for you and to try something different, and that's something that excited you. I mean, what is the statistic about people tend to go in like 7-year cycles with professions, right? So and I don't know if you've had this experience, Megan, where you're like, okay, I think I've learned enough about all of this that I'm interested in right now.
Yeah, I think
This
that's
being a
really interesting about the 7-year cycles. I don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but I've done the same thing for such a long period of time, and I feel very blessed that I get to do this work that I love, and I've been able to sustain myself. I do have different phases in it, for sure. I also think that you're bringing up something too that is super important in this world that we live in today of social media, etc., is to do it for yourself. I mean, sometimes as a writer, and I'm writing a book, and I'm sure Stephanie can relate to this. Is like, is it going to sell? But what would the audience think? And lately, I've maybe my pivot is I've started writing fiction,
Oh,
and that's a whole new thing for me. I've only written nonfiction, and of course, I'm like, oh my God, this will never sell. I'll never get an agent. Nobody's going to read this. And I'm like, you know what, Megan, just stop and do this for you. Write this fiction for you from your heart. And I tell you, it's been a little challenging, but if you can get to that place, it's really yummy. It's very, very nurturing. So I think as we're talking about this pivoting, you know, uh, it's sometimes pivoting just to do it for you.
yeah.
And I think that's really important.
And that's a big pivot, going from nonfiction to fiction. I think
Huge.
that's huge. I really do. So I'm like, give yourself some credit.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. No, I think, it's like with anything too, and maybe this is a part of the constant pivot is you gotta show up for it. You know what I mean? You have to show up for what you do and, I think that's a part of it as well.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting, can we go back for a moment to the dance analogy?
Yeah.
Because it's also one thing, like, if you're dancing by yourself and then you're like, "Okay, I need to pivot," but if you're, like, dancing with another, right, or you're in relationship, whether with your spouse, your lover, your child, your boss, your
Mhm.
just how that dance and the need or the
Yeah.
desire to pivot shifts, right? The considerations around that, because if you move in a certain way, they invariably either move with you
Mhm.
or might wanna hold you back from that move or don't move with you, just so it is another that could be its own conversation, but I just
Absolutely.
think about that.
Yeah, for sure, right?
I'm
That's
really
interesting.
fascinated by women that do this on their own because, I feel, and I don't know your relationship status, Megan, but I feel like I am, the fact that there's a lot of things I couldn't have done considering that I have kids if I didn't have a spouse that had health insurance, like things like
Yeah.
that. And I am privileged in that way. And so I feel like I would like to, like, I personally want to talk to women who have been like, yeah, I did this on my own for myself, but by my own terms and my own timeline with like, whatever financial backing or whatever support that they had. And even if it's not work related, like I know a woman who is a teacher and lives on the east side and taught high school and went through her entire transition to becoming a woman on her own by herself in front of high school students that she was teaching.
Wow.
And I just think like that to me is just the epitome of courage because
Yeah.
I don't know a lot of people that don't think that high school can't be rough sometimes. So to go and go through that but she said it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, again, just that idea, it does take courage and it does take faith and
Mhm.
it takes some balls to ultimately to kind of pivot. Wow, you guys, this has been such a great conversation. I think it's time. I'm looking at my watch that we got to start to wrap up here. But I think thank you, Amanda. We've given I think our listeners so much to think about with this idea and just hoping everybody out there that you're light on your feet and you're having some very graceful pivots right now. So thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, and tell our listeners how they can connect with you and read your work and read what you create and what you're up to.
So they can follow The Fold at thefoldmag.com. And our Instagram is the_fold_mag. The Fold Mag on Facebook and on Twitter. And we're working right now on doing some video series work and pivoting the fold itself to really trying to connect connect women and resources to each other so we can create work together. Create work about evolved women or share stories of evolved women. So.
That's amazing.
Amazing. So thank you, Amanda. We also want to give a big shout out thank you to our producers, Sebastiano Tecchio and Nick Patry. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Stephanie.
And thank you, everyone who's listening. Happy pivoting.